For the last 6 or 8 weeks, I have been highlighting in the residential real estate market that we are in a buyer's market. What we are seeing is supply increase and we are seeing demand pull back. We have talked about the presidential election being one of many of the reasons why. Lots of buyers are like, I'm out, I'm annoyed, I'm pissed off, I'm afraid, whatever that is. But that's residential. I am curious about the sophisticated buyers, the buyers with deep pockets, the buyers in the multifamily and commercial real estate market, which I have nearly no experience. So heck, we'll go to Jonathan Twomley and ask him. Jonathan, are you seeing demand fall away even with the big boys, the sophisticated buyers, the folks with millions and millions of dollars? Are they pulling back because of the election also?
Well, the most sophisticated buyers are not. The most sophisticated buyers are just going ahead with their investment programs one way or the other, looking at the market data. But what you definitely see is a lot of more retail side investors and a lot of the LPs saying, "Oh, there's a presidential election coming. I can't do anything until I find out how the election comes out."
Yeah.
As if this is going to somehow impact their investing. And
Yeah.
so definitely see the same phenomenon for sure.
Yeah. It's really interesting because again, something, when you're an economist, you have to kind of pick your area of focus because the economy is such a complex thing. And when you do that and you have 3 decades kind of in the mix and my area of expertise is the consumer. This is why I called it like 6 or 8 weeks ago, is because in my experience, consumers can modify their behavior for about 6 months. And at that time, I think we were like 4 months away from the election. And I'm like, guys, everything's going to pull back. Housing demand pull back, trips pull back, autos pull back. Everybody and their mother is going to be like, hey, too hard, too scary, too important, most important of our lifetime, yada, yada, yada. And they're just out. It seems like we're seeing that in commercial as well, which is interesting because that's why I'm telling people we're in a buyer's market, at least residential, because we have some people who must sell, not want to sell, must sell. And if you are doing the work, if you are writing disrespectful offers, if you are following up, your chances of finding one of those truly motivated sellers, somebody with a don't want her, goes through the roof. So I personally am more active now than I have been the last 9 months because I like operating in a buyer's market. I like when demand goes away because frankly, I get cheaper, right? I get more aggressive. So I'm excited for this environment and I'm glad the retail investor's not there. It makes my job easier.
I mean, the retail investor is the same person as the consumer,
For
right?
sure. No doubt.
So they're making the same kind of analysis with their investment decisions as they are with any kind of big purchase decision, thinking like, well, I just have to wait and see. I'm nervous about what's going to happen. And the reason why this is, I find it so ridiculous, uh, particularly in an investment environment, but even in the residential environment too, is let's just say, because people always say, I have to see how the election turns out. I'm nervous about the election. Okay, so just play a very simple mind game. If the candidate that you don't like wins the election, are you going to not buy a house for 4 years until hopefully they lose and the person you like comes in? Like, is that what's going to happen? And the answer is, of course, no, right? If you are an investor and the wrong person wins the election, are you going to then put your money under your mattress for 4 years? Of course not, right? So the idea that you have to wait for the election to see how it comes out
Mhm.
just makes no sense at all. Now, the only wrinkle on this, and this is the only one I can think of, is okay, you find out who wins the election, you think taxes are going to change one way or the other, so therefore maybe you sell faster to get into this year or whatever, right? I can see that happening, but on the buying side of things, it doesn't make any okay, so candidate X, taxes will go up. You're not going to buy anything for 4 years? No, because the opportunity cost is way higher than whatever the marginal tax rate change is going to be. right? So it's, you'd literally be trading dollars for quarters, or in that sense, in that case, probably dollars for nickels, right? So this whole thing just makes no sense to me. And I, if you can take
Well,
advantage,
it's
like you have, Michael, it's if it's creating a softer market for you to buy in, that's great. For me,
absolutely.
it's a little bit different because I depend on the retail investor to get investments done, right? So, and if they're scared about the election, I mean, they're missing a great opportunity, but I can't
Hmm.
force them to do things that they're not going to do.
Yeah, no, I mean that's this is why I've studied the consumer because the consumer drives the economy. So if you can ever figure out where they're going, you can get a general sense of the overall US economy. That's kind of like status quo for me. But where I really look for the consumer is at inflection points. If I can figure out those inflection points, I can I can make a lot of money. And again, I'm on record. I think it was 2 months ago when I talked about the buyer's market coming to residential and it's time to get aggressive. And it's working out. I'm getting notes almost every day, probably every other day from people going, "Oh my God, I got 25% off. I got closing this. I got closing that." You know, amazing. I couldn't believe it. Right. And this is in a hot market. The consumers are really funny because they often go as a herd. And hence I always go the other direction, right? The herd
Yeah.
scares me. We've talked about that. But also, the consumer acts like they're logical when they are often far more emotional. And they are
Oh yeah.
really emotional at inflections, up or down. And, the emotion is the heart, logic is the brain. And, you know, one of the things that I learned in sales for 30 years was is you have to go after the heart. If you can get the heart first, the emotion, the logic will work itself out. If you just go after the brain, the heart's going to win almost every time. And I think that's a problem. Probably today, even raising money, right? You're going at raising money from investors, probably very logical. I think if you changed your pitch to more emotional, like maybe opportunity cost or, something that pulls on those heartstrings, that might be a more advantageous way. Cause I think when the heart is leading and it leads most of the time, logic goes out the window.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think it's pretty well damn it documented that people make decisions emotionally and then they go back and they justify them rationally, right?
Exactly.
So yes, for sales you definitely have to pull on the heartstrings or some other emotion. It could be greed,
Could
it
be
could be
something.
whatever,
Fear, could
right?
be
So
whatever. Yeah.
yeah, so we have to lead with that, even though that sounds a little smarmy. It's you at least have to incorporate that. And I think one way to do it, I mean, we're getting a little far afield here, but I remember one investor once said to me, I want to know more about the story of the property. Like I want to be like
Mhm.
engaged with like how you found the deal and like I always talk about why I think it's a great deal, but I was very intrigued by that comment of like wanting to understand more of like the story behind the
Yeah.
deal. So I make it a point now to really talk about the story a lot more because I think it allows people to like relate to the deal, not just have it be abstract about like the numbers, right? The numbers
Yeah.
are the numbers. But if they hear a story that's compelling, it's going to make them a lot more
Well,
interested
I,
in the
I
deal.
I I think that's exactly right because I mean, just go back to the opportunity that I invested with you. Why did I do that? Yeah, I know you and the numbers, blah blah blah. But it was the story. It was, hey, I'm a multifamily guy, proven my success track record. Can't find anything. I'm going to hotels or hospitality, and I found this deal, seller financing. Maybe we build a brand long term. It was the story that intrigued me about that opportunity. It wasn't the numbers, right? The
Yeah.
numbers were frankly an afterthought. It was, hey, do I want to be potentially a part of something that A, I have no experience, B, I would never do on my own. But you know what? Maybe this is another way to find value. So it is the story.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Definitely.
Yeah. So let's go back to again. The good news about the election is it's like, I don't know what it is, 44 days away or 42 or something like that. It's almost here. But now let's play this out. Okay, election day happens. Let's assume we know within 24 hours who the winner is. Let's assume there's no kerfuffle about who the winner is. Uh, then what happens? Well, the winner, I don't think they go into office until like the 20th of January or something, the
Yeah, yeah.
22nd or something like that. So the next question I have is what happens between election day and inauguration? Now, obviously, we have Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's. It's it's cold, it's frozen in half the country. Do we still stay in a buyer's market? My answer is I think so, at least in
Oh,
residential.
I agree. I mean, that is always a slow time for real estate anyway, right? Once you hit Thanksgiving, it just people just are consumed with year-end stuff, holiday stuff,
Yeah.
and if they've got deals in the works, they're just focused on getting those deals closed. While they know that like their bankers on out of the office half the time, right? The seller is got all their holiday stuff going on. The lawyers have all their holiday stuff going on. So people are just focused on getting done what they need to get done by year end. So
Yeah.
yeah, if you can, it's good. And I think frankly, I don't know how much the election or the transition will impact that, but it definitely won't make it better than the usual normal year end, right? If
No.
it can only make it
Well, I think it's going
slightly
to make it
to a
worse
lot worse. Yeah, I was
because
saying it'll make it worse if anything, but
yeah, because half, I mean, if you believe the numbers, half the voters are going to be upset their guy
yeah,
lost or their
yeah,
person lost, and the other half's going to be excited and partying because they beat the other side. So yeah, I've told people, and I think I'm right. The we're going to be in a buyer's market at least through January 15th, and it could be February 15th.
yeah.
And then, Jonathan, I don't know what happens because what else is happening during this whole time is Fed is cutting rates. The rates will be down somewhere between 100 and 150 basis points on the Fed funds. And then we don't know what the impact of that's going to be on mortgage rates. I think residential mortgage rates are going to disappoint higher, right? I don't
Mm.
think we're going much below 5.8. But commercial loans, they key off short term, right? And I do think we're going to have the short end collapse and the 10 year is going to stay relatively higher or it's going to be sticky. So I don't know. Could commercial rates be in the fours? Maybe, maybe.
Well, I don't know because I mean, for them to get into the fours, that means you're going to have a sub three T bill,
Yeah,
right?
2 year. What? So what year? I don't know how
Well, it
commercials.
depends on, well, I mean, if it's a 5 year note, it's going off the 5 year. If it's a 7 year note,
Okay.
it's going off the 7 year, and 10 year going off the 10 year. So you're going to have, because you're typically going to have like 180 to 200 basis points of
Yep.
spread, right?
Yeah.
So
So I'm just
um,
checking the 2 year right now because I actually put out this morning that I think the 2 year today it sits at, or as of right now at 3.69. I think the 2 year could be under three,
right.
but I think the 10 year stays sticky at 3.738.
Well, it's not, yeah, but no one's going off the two. It's going to be off the five. So what's the
So
five
what's
year
the?
at?
So I don't on my I only have the 2 and then the 10 year on the thing that I happen to
Yeah.
pull up. So I don't know. I don't know what the 5 year is, but I'll look it up. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting because I do think we're gonna get yield steepening where the short end comes down. We're just gonna get a normal bond market, right? Where
Mm.
the shorter the duration, the lower the
The
rate, the
lower the
longer
rate.
the
Yeah.
yeah. So we're not gonna have inversion where you're borrowing, higher at 2 than 10. That's just not supposed to happen. So it's gonna be interesting. We have until let's call it February 1st, where buyers are on revolt. We'll have an inauguration late January. It'll be interesting to see where rates are because at least in residential, if we get to the spring selling season and I'm wrong about mortgage rates and we're in the low fives, watch out. That could be
Yeah.
wild. Marginal demand will fly off the shelf.
I mean, there's definitely a lot of pent up demand out there, right?
And
So
it's like your
yeah,
finger on a hose. It's like
yeah,
growing by the minute.
yeah. I mean, interesting what you say about the market softening because I just noticed walking around my neighborhood the last couple of days, like, wow, there are a lot of for sale signs out. And
Hmm.
I mean, a lot for this neighborhood, right?
Right.
But usually you don't see any, right? Or you see that where they're up for like a day and
Right.
then they're gone, right? Or whatever, or they're in contract like right away. But right now, just walking around, it's like, oh, wow, that house is for sale. And then I
Mm.
started thinking like, oh, there's a house in my neighborhood that's really beat up. I'm like, this could be an interesting flip
Ah!
opportunity, right? So,
Yeah,
but you know, now would be a good time to buy one of those deals, right? The market is
yeah,
soft,
yeah.
and if those sellers have to sell, and given the state of the house, probably they do. It's could be interesting.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, I talked to several real estate investors that flip wholesale in the residential space. And my conversations with all of them is now's the time to get uber aggressive on buying because
Mm.
these guys will be exiting in the spring selling
Into
season,
that
right?
spring selling
If
system.
if they
Yep.
lock up now, they close in December, they exit into spring. And it's like, guys, as long as you're being safe below the median, you're adjusting your ARV down 5-10% for cushion, go ham. It's the time.
That actually must explain why I'm also seeing a lot of like a lot of renovations going on in the neighborhood too. There's a lot of DOB permits
Yep.
on windows, and I mean, just on my walk yesterday, I think I saw like two guys carrying sheetrock into buildings.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what's going
It's
on.
gonna be interesting. So it was very interesting having this conversation. It looks like maybe the uber sophisticated, they don't care about the election, but a lot of retail investors, both residential, commercial, do. So at the end of the day, what you do with this information is you don't fight the consumer. You let them go do their thing. You get aggressive. You take care of you. They go left. You go right. Right disrespectful offers. Follow up. Let's have some fun. Jonathan, how can they find you?
Yeah, well, come follow me on LinkedIn. Always a great way to have a conversation with me. Or you can go to my school group and join my coaching program, which is school.com/AIC, which is short for Apartment Investors Club. So come on and join the group.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.